Hey fearsome friends, I just want to say thank you all for coming to my live stream. It was so much fun and we're going to do it again really soon. Now no trait is more justified than revenge in the right time and place. These stories make you feel a little warm inside, and I've always believed that bad people will always end up destroying themselves through their actions. So sit back, relax, and get cozy, comfy, warm, and enjoy these true stories of nuclear revenge. The events that follow span from late 2019 to last week. My soon-to-be ex-wife was my high school sweetheart. We started dating in 1992 when we were both 17. We're both 45 now, and have been together ever since. She's the only woman I've ever been with in my entire life. We married 5 years later at 22, fresh out of college, and a year later we had our first of 2 children, both boys, who are now 22 and 17. 23 years I gave to her, built her a house, worked my ass off to give her the life she wanted. Sure, we had rough patches, but what marriage doesn't? Even in the worst of times, we found a way to pull through and come out the other side better, which made the discovery of her affair that much more jarring. Flashback to March 2020, when I first got the feeling something was off. For a good 2 months prior, we were in a funk. I was on the mend from reconstructive knee surgery, blew out my ACL fall 2019, and was still lacking in movement. At the time I only had about 55% range of motion on my knee, and this took a toll quite a lot in the house. I was off on workers' comp, as I had been injured on the job, and I was unable to do my usual household duties, so a lot got backed up. My sons would do what they could, but tasks only I was capable of doing had to be put on the back burner, or my wife had to do them, which she wasn't pleased with. Things also crawled to a standstill in the bedroom between us. It had already slowed down prior to my injury, but in the state I was in at the time, it completely stopped. During these months, she, we'll call her Sue, was spending more time hanging with co-workers after work. Between November 2019 to March 2020, it was a regular occurrence for her. Naturally, I thought nothing of it. I've never in the 23 years I'd been with her had any reason to worry or not trust her. She has her friends and I have mine, and we have mutual ones. I'd go hang out with my friends all the time, and there was no issue. It was all above board. It was around January of this year that I noticed something odd. Sue started getting noticeably distant with me. Sure, we were in a funk, but she'd never deny me affection to that point. The usual hugs and kisses she'd give me came to a halt. Her phone was attached to her hand long before my suspicion grew, but she'd always share and show me things she'd discovered on the web. DIY ideas and recipes on Pinterest, memes, all kinds of stuff. But she was now being guarded about her phone. Even her interactions with me became more snippy, as if she couldn't be bothered. So we're now in March. COVID has arrived and New York City is in lockdown. Our chosen careers fall under the essential designation, so neither of us have to work from home. I'd just been recently cleared to return to work after 5 months on the shelf, and I was eager to get back after it, as 5 months on my ass rehabbing my knee and not being able to do physical stuff drove me nuts. For context, I enjoy physical activities. I'm an avid martial artist, and I'm typically in the gym 4 days a week, on top of all the home projects I did. Within a week or 2 of the lockdown, my soon-to-be ex-wife alerted me that she was going to have to start putting in extra hours. Again, I thought nothing of it, because of her field. Of course, I was under the assumption it'd be every other day, but no, it was every day, and not just an hour or 2. She'd come home 3 or more hours later and go straight to the shower, spend a little time with me, a little time with our 17-year-old, and then go to bed. As I'm able to support myself on my knee better, we started getting intimate again. But as you'd probably guess, she wasn't mentally or emotionally present for it, which I noticed quickly. So by early April, the picture started getting clearer to me. All of the signs were pointing to the idea that she was having an affair. That's when I decided I needed to find answers. So I scoured the internet on things I should be looking for, signs of infidelity in one's partner, and sure enough, she was pretty much ticking all the boxes on such behavior. So then my search inquiry advanced to how to find proof. I started with her social media, looking at her Facebook entries from months prior. It's pretty much the usual. Pics of us and our sons, pics with her and her friends, and a more than a few pics of her nights out with co-workers. In these pics is a mixed bag of her closest friends from work, and a couple of folk I've never met from her work. But I see one reoccurring thing in a number of these pictures. One guy. In every picture he's in, he's rather uncomfortably close to her. His arm is around her shoulder, or his hand on her lower back. Way too close for a guy I've never personally met. Needless to say, that put a sour taste in my mouth. But that wasn't the worst of it. The worst was the fact that apparently this dude is a friend of hers on Facebook and follows her on Instagram. So I went to look up his Facebook account, and wouldn't you know it, I'm blocked. Why the hell am I blocked from seeing this guy's Facebook account? But he's friends with her on Facebook. Yeah, now I'm in Batman detective mode. At that point, I wasn't even going to try to deny it. I knew she was cheating on me with this guy. My mission was to find out for how long. And over the course of April and May, that's what I did. You know, I never had any clue the depth of info you could secure from phone, text and email records up until then. We have a family plan cell phone package, and I was able to pull up quite a bit of data. Her data history was telling. The two most frequent numbers she had interacted with from October 2019 to April 2020 was my own, and a number I'd never seen before. Take a wild guess whose number it was. A quick check on Google and I confirmed it was the dude from the photos who blocked me on Facebook. We'll call him POS, 'cause that's what he is. Again, the picture becomes even clearer at this point. But a lot of their messages and texts were disjointed, which meant she was deleting a lot of them. I knew she was cheating on me with this guy, but nothing in the data could serve as a smoking gun. I needed more evidence. It's at this point that I tell my best friend Oz what I'd found. He asked me if I'd confronted her with what I had, and I said no, because I felt like it wasn't enough. That's when he told me about an app that I could download to apparently spy on her communications in real time. I won't say the name as I don't know the rules on that here. But I got it installed, synced up my data plan and waited. Within days of doing so, I finally saw it. A text string between the two of them, talking about how much fun they'd had the previous night and making plans to do it again that weekend. Boom. Gut punch. To say I was completely devastated was an understatement. I guess that moment counts as my D-Day. And for the next 2 days after, I was just broken. I actively distanced myself from her those 2 days immediately after D-Day, which she was noticeably shaking by. She tried to console me and ask me what was wrong, but I'd brush it off and leave her presence. I couldn't even look at her. This woman who I'd given 23 years of my life to, who I'd given everything I could and more to as a husband, and she stepped outside of our marriage for a guy just 5 years older than our eldest son. By the 3rd day, I wasn't even sad anymore. I was angry. I contacted Oz to let him know my suspicion was confirmed, and he asked me had I confronted her yet. My answer was no, and I told him I wanted payback. I didn't want to just divorce her. I wanted to destroy her. I wanted to leave her life in shambles and ruin her. It was going to take time to do so, and I devised a plan. In my readings and research on infidelity, I had seen a quote that resonated with me. The enemy of infidelity is unpredictability, or something to that ilk. That was going to be the basis of my plan. I was going to make her life hell on wheels, while also secretly planning my exit strategy. So we're now in early June, and I've still got the app installed. Pretty much every night I'm gathering as much data as I can, seeing their back and forth messages. They're talking like it's a full-blown relationship they're in. Sexting, lovey-dovey romantic stuff, nudes, the whole thing. At that point I had stopped looking at any of it. I was just collecting info and cataloguing on my private FPS server. Meanwhile, I started doing things out of the ordinary. I started going out at odd times. I started coming home even later than she did. In her presence, I was on my phone a lot more than usual. And when she asked, "What are you up to?" I just simply said, "Just stuff," and put my phone away. I'd also changed my login info on everything, so she couldn't access any of my stuff. Mind you, for our entire marriage, we'd never hidden anything from each other. But right around, I'm assuming, the start of her affair, she'd changed her password on Facebook, as well as on her phone, stating she had to because of the security breaches in recent months. Yeah, really nice cover for hiding your affair from your husband. Anyway, I'd clued Oz in on my plan, as well as telling my older and only sister and 2 more of my closest friends what was going on. These are people I trust with my life, and I swore to them secrecy. For context, Oz and I have been friends since we were kids. The other of our friends, Joey and Nina, we've known since high school. Make a note of Nina. She comes into play down the road. July came, and my soon-to-be ex-wife was in full paranoia mode. She was texting and calling me a lot more frequently now, asking me if I was going to be home when she gets home, when I'm coming home while she is, and I'm not, asking me what I'm up to, the works. I can see the seed planted in her head the month prior is starting to sprout, especially in her communication with POS. She's confiding in him her doubt and confusion, telling him that I'm getting cold and distant. The nerve of this woman. In the interim of these interactions with POS, she suggested that maybe they should stop meeting up at our house because she has no idea if I'd just show up, confirming that yes, she's had this guy in my home. Thanks, Sue. POS asked her in that specific communication, was she worried about me potentially cheating on her, which actually pissed her off. I can't even begin to describe the level of joy and how many laughs I got out of reading that exchange. My cheating wife arguing with her affair partner over if she's mad her husband could be cheating on her. Oh, the irony. Now bear in mind, I'm not hooking up with anyone. When I leave, I'm usually at Oz or Joey's, throwing back some booze, watching fights and spending time with my bros, or at my big sis's house, hanging with her and my brother-in-law, who's like an older brother to me. My sister is 52 and her husband is 58. She had told him about my soon-to-be ex's infidelity, but not of my plan. Couldn't risk it as he's a bit of a blabbermouth. Fast forward now to October. That's when things seriously picked up. I've been in my faux affair for 3 months now, and Sue is hyper-aware of the fact that I'm actively pulling away from her. It's been as long as the day I enacted my plan until the day she confronted me, October 20th, 2020, that I'd even touched her. No hugs, no kisses, no initiation of intimacy. Nothing. Not like she needed it. She was still stooping POS, just at his place or at motels. So that afternoon she called me at work, which wasn't rare before all this began, but certainly hadn't happened in a while, and asked me to come straight home after work, saying she had something important to tell me. I'm not going to lie to you. I half believed she was going to come clean about her infidelity, but she of course didn't. Instead, I got home to her asking me if I was unhappy with her. The nerve. She cited the fact that I'd been spending way too much time away from home. I don't show her affection anymore, and our sex life had completely died. She told me she was worried I was pushing her away because I was resentful of how she treated me the months I was rehabbing with my knee. And then came the punchline. She asked if I was cheating on her. I fell out on the floor laughing hysterically. And when I say hysterically, I mean Joker laughing, gas hysterical. On the surface it looked like, to her assuming, it was me laughing off the notion of being unfaithful. But it was of course actually me laughing at the sheer irony of what was happening in front of my eyes. I was tearing up, pounding on the floor in complete hysterics for a good 2 minutes, before I composed myself enough to answer. I sat up and looked at her in the eyes for the first time in months, and shook my head, but I didn't give her an answer. I stood up, brushed myself off, kissed the top of her head, and went about settling in for the night. Later that evening, as I'm in my office, I decided, you know what? Given the brevity of what happened, I wanted to see what she was telling him. So I fired up the app, and sure enough, they're actually texting in real time. She told POS, I know he's cheating on me. I asked him tonight and he literally laughed in my face. He fell on the floor and laughed for like 5 minutes. It wasn't 5 minutes, obviously. He doesn't even care how I feel anymore. I don't know how or why, but he's gone. I know I've lost him. This is karma, I know it. The smile I had on my face reading that must have resembled the Cheshire Cat. She was breaking. POS attempted to console her, saying that if I cared enough for her, she wouldn't have come to him to give her what I wasn't giving her. But the tone of her responses told me she was having doubt now. She had the nerve to step out of our marriage because I was unable to fulfill my role as a husband due to legitimate injury, and kept the affair going for at that point nearly an entire year. But the idea of her losing me to another woman was enough to make her waver. What a weakling. Now during all of this, I was also exacting the second part of my plan for payback, getting all my affairs in order financially. In September, I had met with a family attorney to get the ball rolling on divorce papers, with the mountain of evidence I'd piled up to that point. New York is an at-fault state as far as divorce, and the overwhelming amount of proof I'd gathered displaying Sue's infidelity pretty much solidified. I could nail her to the wall in a divorce case. My lawyer instructed me to get all of my financials in order in preparation for whatever division of assets might come as a result. I went one better than that though, secretly pulling all of my money out of our joint account and putting it in my personal account. I also started shopping around for an apartment as part of Phase 2. We're now in November and I've not changed my behaviour. In fact, I've ramped it up. This is where my friend Nina comes into play. For context, Nina and Sue have never been what you call close. I met Nina freshman year of high school, 2 years before I met Sue. Even way back then, Sue has seen Nina as a threat, as she's my closest female friend. There's always been an implied, I don't trust her, from Sue regarding Nina. She's never addressed it directly, but it's obvious to anyone who pays attention. Conversely, Nina's never been a big fan of Sue either. Early in mine and Sue's relationship, Nina called attention to me how Sue was pretty much imposing herself into our little square of friends, whereas I didn't do the same with Sue's set of friends. That irked Nina, because she knew why Sue was doing it. Her. Among Sue's circle even now, there are no male friends, aside from POS, whereas Nina is the only girl in my square. Nina had been stuck overseas due to the virus, and finally returned to New York City November 3rd. Oz and Joey and I decided we were going to celebrate her return with a night at Joey's house for dinner and drinks. There was only 5 of us: Oz, Joey, Joey's wife, who is also Nina's sister, Nina and myself. Sticking to the CDC guidelines, we took the Rona very seriously, and Nina, being the evil mastermind she is, came up with an evil idea to trigger Sue. She suggested we take some photos in the same vein as the photos I discovered of Sue and POS months prior, and post them to my Facebook. So that's what we did. It wasn't until the 5th that Sue got wind of it, as I'm guessing a few friends noticed my updates and saw how uncomfortably close I was with Nina. This really messed her mind up, because she still believed I was cheating, and I can almost guarantee she wanted to accuse Nina, but she knew that Nina had been stuck in Europe for the majority of the year. It still didn't stop her from attempting to dress me down that night for being so, as she said, handsy in the pics. I saw this as a golden opportunity to deliver the lead jab for my knockout blow. I said, "So what about the pictures with you and POS from last year? He was pretty handsy in them. But did you see me get bent out of shape over it?" She was like a deer in headlights. It was the first time I even mentioned the dude's name throughout all of this. The hamster wheel in her head started reeling in real time as she tried to explain away those pics. To that point, she hadn't even known I'd seen them. That's how little I use Facebook. When I actually do post something, it's like an event to people, which is why the pics with Nina specifically got so much traction among our circles. And explain away she did. He's that way with everyone. He's just a really friendly guy. I can see how it looks, but there's nothing there. I'm sorry if those pics hurt you. I'll delete them. No, the pics aren't what hurt me. The year you've been sleeping with the dude whilst lying to me that you're working extra hours and hanging with friends is what hurt me. But vengeance, as Lieutenant Com Worf from Star Trek says, is a dish best served cold. From that night, Sue was being extra specially clingy and attentive to me, like annoyingly so. She was trying to initiate affection and intimacy with me, and I'd stonewalled her every time. All the while, I was still archiving everything she's saying to POS. Mind you, by this point, I'd long since gone numb. Any desire I might have had to save my marriage was dead. I checked out the day I enacted the first phase of my plan. She's confiding in him that I've gotten worse, that she doesn't know what to do, and she feels like I absolutely hate her. I do. Then comes the bombshell. She says she can't see him anymore. The guilt is too much for her, and she feels like karma is suffocating her. She can't risk losing me. She says that she loves POS deeply, but she's still in love with me, and she has to save her marriage before she loses me. No, my dear, you're about 8 months too late for that. POS loses it, saying such lovely things as, "He doesn't love you the way I love you," and "You're making a mistake. You can't just throw me away like this." That text chain would be the last they'd have until about 3 weeks ago. Throughout the remainder of November into December, Sue is stuck in limbo. She's trying to gauge where my headspace is, and is still unable to tell if I'm actually being unfaithful. Meanwhile, phase 2 of the plan was now officially complete. The divorce papers were done. I'd found me a studio apartment in Co-op City, New Yorkers all know the area, and signed a 2-year lease on it. All of my money was in my personal account. I was ready to throw my haymaker. So we're now at Thanksgiving. My eldest and his girlfriend were hosting a small gathering of our immediate families. So them, oldest and his girlfriend. Oldest girlfriend's parents, she's an only child. Myself, Sue and our youngest. We had a great night. My eldest girlfriend is studying to be a chef, and she did all the cooking herself. That girl can cook, let me tell you. As I had to keep up appearances of nothing being wrong between Sue and I initiated affection with her several times that evening. Kisses on the cheek, cute little hugs, wrapping my arms around her shoulders from behind. The gestures didn't go unnoticed by her, as she revelled in it. But bear in mind, this was the first time I'd touched this woman since I'd kissed the top of her head the night she'd confronted me in October, so just about 2 months. And I'm not going to lie, I felt repulsed doing it, but I had to. I couldn't risk the plan, and me being distant to her in the face of my boys, my oldest girlfriend and her parents, as it would set off alarms. So my youngest decided he wanted to stay over with his big brother for the night, so Sue and I headed home. On the drive, she thanked me for being so good to her, and said, "I don't know what you're going through, baby, but I'm here for you." I had to hold off busting out in maniacal laughter again, and responded by saying, "I know, I just need time." So for the first time realistically since springtime, we had sex that night. I figured why not? With what I'm about to do, I may as well get some action before I delete her from my existence. I won't go into detail, but it wasn't lovemaking. When I was finished, she was a lump of flesh laying there trying to figure out the direction of the truck that ran her over. No cuddling or anything after. I just got up, showered, and went to go to sleep in my office. To her confusion, though, I used a condom. The first time to damn decades that I had. She was definitely perplexed by it, but she didn't ask questions. I sure as hell wasn't going raw in her knowing that she'd been doing so with POS for months at that point. I woke up the next day and checked my handy-dandy spy app. And for the first time in weeks, she responded to POS. Dude went full novella. He professed his love for her, said she was wasting her time trying to rekindle a flame in me that had died. That she'd been in a prison with me for 23 years, and deserved to experience the love and affection of a man who would cherish her. Mind you, this dude is 27. 5 years older than our oldest son. And he's that sprung on a 45-year-old married mother of 2. What a grade A high-quality simp. She chose to blow up our marriage and destroy the home we'd built for this dude. Pretty boy with a soft side. Huh. She responded saying pretty much the same thing she'd said when they'd last talked. That she loved him and enjoyed their time together, but she couldn't lose me. I'm still the love of her life, but she'll always have a place for him in her heart. That they can still be friends if he chooses, but the physical relationship between them is over. He begged her to see him one last time that week. And yep, you guessed it, she said yes. One more for the road, right? Who am I to say anything? That's what I did to her the previous night. Of course I added all of that to the archive I'd compiled. December 4th is when Phase 3, the final phase of Operation Shinobi Ghost, started. The divorce papers were in hand. My new place or residence was set up. Now I had to slowly start moving my stuff out of the house. But first I had to break the news to my boys. I called my oldest to the house that Friday night, had them join me in my office, and laid everything on that table. Not the specifics, but that their mother had been cheating on me for over a year, and I was going to be filing for divorce soon. My 17-year-old was especially shaken up by this, because he himself had recently experienced his first taste of infidelity. Yeah, his first girlfriend had cheated on him just 4 months prior. Seeing his heart broken, a second time at the idea that his own mother was capable of doing this, hit him hard. My eldest took it a lot better, and suggested taking his brother in to live with him until this blows over, which I agreed. We packed up some of his stuff, and he asked me if I was going to be okay. I told him, yes, son, I'm going to be all right, and so are you. We're going to be all right, I promise. And then they were off. The hardest part was now over, and it was now time to arm the nukes. Over the next few weeks, day by day, Oz would help me get a little of my most sensitive stuff out of the house. Gave him a list of all the definite stuff to grab while Sue and I were at work, and left him the spare key. This was all stuff Sue wouldn't notice was missing unless you told her it was gone. I'd also gotten a new phone and phone number, and told everyone who needed to know, Oz, Joey, Nina, my boys, Big Sis and my mother, my new contact info. Meanwhile, I was keeping up the ruse with Sue, and she's none the wiser. Trickling bits and pieces of affection to her, just to keep her off the trail, whilst she's still in contact with POS. Not to the extent that they had been, but there's still an emotional thing happening. The fog is faint, but it's still there. All the while I gather everything, and I do mean everything. Every bit of data I've archived since I started the plan. Call logs, texts, pics, emails, everything, and started making printouts. Folks, I must have spent over $1,500 on Staples supplies, printer ink, paper, binders, the works, and I catalogued everything in order, from the beginning of the affair till that last bit 2 weeks ago, December 16th, in the binders. 14 of them. I then put each one in a box and gift-wrapped each, addressing them to various people. My mother, my father passed 7 years ago, her parents, her 2 sisters, her brother, her HR department. Did I forget to mention POS works for the same company, and there's an expressed rule against intercompany relationships because of the nature of what she does. I also sent it to several of her friends, POS and POS's parents. I lugged all of those people to the post office and shipped them all out December 16th. ETA for delivery December 22nd to 24th. Perfect. So we're now at Christmas Eve. Sue came home around the usual time. No idea if she'd seen POS. I'd stopped tracking her on the app on the 18th. I figured I'd gotten all the mileage I needed from it. And as per usual, she showered, hung out with me a bit. I blow her back out on the living room couch. I know, I'm an asshole, and she turned in for the night. The final phase was upon me at long last. The nuke I'd been arming since June was finally about to launch. In the middle of the night, I woke up and wrapped up one of the 3 remaining binders with the divorce papers taped to the inside cover, and set it on my side of the bed with a note that said Merry Christmas on it. Next to it I left my old phone and the business card of my lawyer. I packed up the remainder of my most needed items, enough to fill 2 backpacks, and I left my home that I'd spent 23 years in for the last time. That, my friends, was 1 week ago. To Sue, I am completely off the grid. Gone. Shadow ghosts. She's blocked on Facebook, but still hasn't blocked me for some reason. So I'm keeping tabs on the fallout. It's absolutely glorious. My packages have reached everyone I sent them to, and Sue is getting crucified. Her youngest sister completely dressed her down. Both of her parents have condemned her. My mum absolutely destroyed her. I know my mum has a mean streak, but the things she called Sue were unholy. She's been frantically trying to find out if anyone knows where I am, but those that do aren't going to say a word. All over her Facebook feed she's desperately trying to reach me, because I'm guessing she knows I'm likely looking. But I'm not saying a word to her without my lawyer present. That'll be the next time I share oxygen with her. She's got no way of spinning the narrative to paint me as the bad guy, because I've exposed her to everyone who matters to her. And from what a mutual friend who works in the same company as her, she and POS apparently are being put on administrative leave as of tomorrow. So yeah, chances are she'll be going into 2021 unemployed. As for the final 2 binders, well, one has been turned over to my lawyer as my final bit of evidence for my impending divorce, and the last one I put in my storage unit, to be burned in Joey's fire pit when the divorce is final. Do I feel guilty about this? No, not even in the slightest. 23 years I did right by this woman. I gave her the home she wanted. I gave her the family she wanted. I gave her the life I felt we both deserved, and I loved her unconditionally. Never had I faltered. Never have I strayed. Never have I even entertained the notion of breaking my vows. When an issue came up that I felt was affecting our marriage, I came to her and told her, and we sorted it out as best we could. She opted to find comfort in another man's bed, rather than come to me and say she was unhappy with our sex life at the time. She decided to step out with a young punk who gave her the tingles. So no, I have no sympathy for what I did, or for her. She can burn in hell for all I care. The most I stand to lose is my house, a car, and maybe a couple of $100 a month in alimony. But seeing as the divorce is filed under the statute of adultery, and NYS is at fault, that might get waived with the insurmountable evidence I've provided. As far as I'm concerned, she's dead to me, and I'm never looking back. So I'm in my 20s, as is my significant other that I'll call fiancé for this post. Now I'm heavily disabled mentally and physically, which will be important for later, due to certain reasons caused by my biological parents. I refuse to relive those events, so I won't say what happened to me during the time I lived with them growing up. But I will say that my parents are divorced and hate each other. I have a service dog, and she's the best thing that has ever happened to me, and I'll call her Melly for this post to protect my privacy. So strap in for the ride, folks, because this is nuclear. Due to my physical disabilities and my mental illness that I was legally diagnosed with by an actual certified professional, I receive federal aid because I am physically unable to work as a result. I've been receiving benefits and using them for the right purposes, like my rent and getting my college loan paid off. Plus, among other things, I'm using it to pay for my medications. But see, my mother is a firm disbeliever of mental illness, and states that because she had a bad life, no one else can suffer, and would always use that excuse with me. Unfortunately, too, she was the person that the government dubbed in control of my aid benefits. That was until I moved away with my now significant other, who helped me get out of that situation. However, during my time with my mother, she wouldn't report to the government like she was supposed to, even after I told her to. And her reply? Why don't you report it yourself then? Now I would have, but the government doesn't want anything to do with me, as I'm not the one that they dubbed in charge. I had actually tried on multiple occasions to convince her to do the right thing, but to no avail. And that's when I tried myself. They literally asked me, directly after getting my name, to speak with my representative, my mum, then promptly cut me off as I was trying to explain the situation. When that failed, I tried going in person, only to be met with, "We need to talk to your representative, or they have to be present for you to speak with us." This was all because my mental illnesses had made me physically incapable of distinguishing reality from my psychosis episodes that I randomly get, so I fully understand it from their point of view. Shout out to fiancé for literally always being my anchor, and Melly too. It still kind of stung though. Imagine being told that because you have a mental illness, that you're unable to be a functioning adult to be able to speak to someone about your personal situation. Inevitable though, I guess. I was penalized for lying to the government as a result of her stupidity. You see, the years that I lived with my mum, I wasn't told how much aid and benefits I was getting. I knew it was more than she told me though, as her and her boyfriend both always seemed to be able to afford expensive things like jewelry and new phones around the time of my payments. In short, the rule for my payments is basically that I can't have access to the money, but it has to be used for me, not her. The only other option I had, other than magically getting better, was to get kicked out of the house and end up homeless without my benefits. But I needed those to treat my conditions. My mother and her boyfriend also would hurt me a lot, steal my meds, etc. Fiancé had learned the truth eventually though, because he called in on me one day while I was cooking, and he witnessed my mum coming in and placing my hand inside a burning hot pan and screaming about getting more money I don't deserve. It took everything in him to not lose it with her when he saw this, and he began to monitor everything from then on. I would just be on Discord or Skype with him during this time, so we could start gathering evidence by me leaving my phone on record at the same time as the call with him, whenever she'd enter the same room as me. Cue the nuclear revenge. One of the ways my mother tried to keep me tied to her was, she would get me in debt with anyone and everyone she could, doctor appointments and college, etc., by stealing the cash that I had hidden from her to pay for those things. She was clearly also using my benefits for herself, which is against the law since it's meant for me. So fiancé, being the amazing man he is, saved up some money from his job and his active duty pay and paid off my debt whilst keeping our evidence compiled and ready. And then the day freedom came. I got to a point where I just snapped, because she'd even tried to get rid of Melly. After about 2 years of saving and biting the bullet, fiancé paid off my biggest debt, so I was able to have enough room to be able to move out, and had me move in with him. We then had all the recordings from the past 2 years and turned it all in to the authorities. The Social Security Department, of course, let me change my representative, so fiancé became that person. During this time, though, he had been called up to be stationed for military duty, far away in another state. Social Security approved it, though, and said it was okay since he had orders to go. The outcome? From what my older brother told me, Mum had tried desperately to keep herself as my representative. She'd lost the money she was using for all her fancy things, as well as her house. Yes, you read that right. As she was using my benefit money to pay for the house too, without telling me. She was found guilty of federal fraud and falsifying federal documents, among other things. I don't know how long she got, but I didn't bother asking, because I quite frankly didn't care. I just wanted her completely cut out of my life. My brother and I are on friendly terms, and we talk a lot, which is nice, and my condition has improved since I was able to start treatment without having someone get in my way. Fiancé is amazing, and acts like a caretaker for me. When I left my mum, I didn't tell her I was leaving, otherwise I believe she would have done literally anything, including murder, to try to get me to stay. This all took place 17 years ago. I was 20 years old and was dating my first true love. We'd been together for 1.5 years already, and everything was great. Our mother had her own company which traded fashion clothes for kids, and she made tons of money. She really liked me too, and they needed someone to drive one of their 3.5-ton trucks, so she came up with the idea to hire me, as I was so unhappy with the job I had. I accepted her offer, and we started working together. The job was okay, even though I had to work a huge amount of overtime, as she thoroughly introduced me to how the whole company worked. She had a huge storage facility, a store, and 2 trucks, the one that I drove and a big one. I worked for her around a year, and in that time I knew every single thing about the company. She entrusted me with all the dirty secrets, and this will come into play later. At this point, things took a huge turn. I found out that my girlfriend had cheated on me with her ex, so as a result I broke up with her instantly. It was an ugly situation, and after it had all gone down, I called her mother and told her what was going on. I explained that I didn't want to mix my personal life with business, so I will still be there to work, but I didn't ever want to see her daughter again. She said that everything was fine, but of course she'd sided with her daughter, and I felt that she was mad at me because of the breakup. Going to work, I acted as professionally as I could, and put all the drama aside. However, after a while, she would start singling me out as someone who was making mistakes, so she'd have an excuse to discipline me. Now this has been going on for months, and I recently realized that she was just waiting for an excuse to fire me, but I wasn't going to give it to her that easily. She was getting pissed that she couldn't find anything on me, so she came up with a plan. On the truck we had a power generator, which provided a light and power for a laptop and printer, etc. It worked in 2 ways. From the fuel when we were on the road, or with a cable in case we were at a storage. But it hadn't been installed by a legitimate company, They just hired an electrician to do it, and he didn't do a good job. We had to flip a switch all the time if we used it with a cable connection, otherwise it would burn out. So this one particular time, as I loaded the truck, she'd convinced a co-worker to flip the switch back, and after a few minutes the lights were gone, and I noticed something was wrong. It burned out, of course, but I knew I hadn't forgotten the switch, because I had been loading the truck for an hour, and it had only taken 5 minutes tops to burn out, so it couldn't have been me. She came for me over it, and didn't even hear me out. She started yelling and fired me on the spot, telling me she was going to pay for the repairs out of my last paycheck, so I shouldn't expect any money from her. I obviously didn't take this lightly, and told her that she really didn't want to go this way with me, but she refused to listen. It took a few days for me to cool down, but I wanted to give her a last chance. I called her and told her that even though I knew what was going on with how she'd just set me up, if I got my money I would call it a day, and we don't have to see each other ever again. But she told me to F off, so I came up with a plan. Now the first store she owned didn't have a bathroom, which was illegal in my country, and the staff would use the bathrooms in the restaurant across the street if they needed. I reported this to the authorities, and the next day they had to close because of this violation, and told her she couldn't open up until they have a bathroom. She called me right away and asked me if I'd had anything to do with it. I laughed and told her. I said that you didn't want to go this way with me, and I hung up. I knew that myself and my co-worker had worked a lot of overtime too, and it was all in the record. How many hours driven, what distance and when finished. So I called the authorities again and told them everything. They turned up and checked all the records, then gave the company a brutal fine. She sent me some obscene text messages after that, and I simply replied, "Ain't done yet." A few hours went by and my phone rang. It was her. She asked me if we could talk it over. She even said she'd send me my last paycheck. But I shut her down immediately and told her that it was too late. I then called the fire department to report the bad wiring in the store. It was outdated and would short on a daily basis, and they only had 2 fire extinguishers. On the same day they had to close the storage down as well, which was the last way she could make her money whilst they were getting everything else up to code, which alone was costing a huge amount. However, because of the fines she'd gotten, she couldn't afford the renovations. A few months later she had to file for bankruptcy, and I know this because my ex-girlfriend called me up to say, "I hope you're happy, asshole. You made my family bankrupt." I never did get my paycheck. But at that point I didn't even care anymore, and I was happy with the outcome. After a few months, the tax department took almost everything from her. The store, her stock, the storage unit, all her trucks, the whole 9 yards. She'd had so many fines from different authorities, she couldn't pay them. So after everything was gone, she had to sell her house, move to a smaller apartment, and was never able to own a business again. As far as I know now, she works in a store as a clerk. And as for my ex-girlfriend, she married the guy she cheated on me with, and they have 4 kids. After their second child, she really let herself go. So now I'm happy that I didn't have a child with her. And me? I had a long-term relationship with someone, and we had a child together. But unfortunately, she was a lazy gold digger. So after 5 years, we separated. I've since met the love of my life, and we've been together almost 9 years, and we are very happy. Hey, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed my video. And if you did, could you please give me virtual hugs by subscribing and clicking that notifications button. I also have a Patreon page and YouTube channel membership if you'd like to support me further. Thank you again for being here. Keep being creepy.